found this property. It had all the right characteristics. And then I interviewed a bunch of innovative architect and design firms in the city. And we looked at off-site prefab modular housing, but it just wasn't feasible. Took the tender drawings out to 5 different builders. Jake was one of the builders we invited, and he had a really convincing story about how he had a vision for doing these things in a way that quality-oriented, cost-effective, and also was really respectful of the neighbors. Everyone who approaches this thing is concerned, what are the neighbors going to say? Like when I talked about building one on my property, my wife said, well, the neighbors are going to hate us. So that's the last thing you want, is to have a hostile environment. So Jake had lots of experience in renovations and making homeowners and neighbors very happy. And he had a really defined approach to how he was going to build in a really tight space, which other builders who had great reputations came highly recommended. They were kind of like, well, I'll figure that out. Jake had already figured it out. That was what won him the project. And then he took these plans and built something that's even more beautiful than what we thought it looked like on paper. Yeah. And he can tell you how he did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the opportunity to be part of a relatively new and innovative movement in Toronto is just exciting from the get-go. Construction, typical residential infill construction, been done so many times. It's hard to find a new way to approach that in the city of Toronto. So just right off the bat, being able to be involved in something that was relatively groundbreaking in Toronto anyway, and to be part of solving a problem that Toronto is having was exciting. That sort of outweighed the construction challenges of building in these tight sites. Once you sort of get over the logistical obstacles, we're not building in, monster Forest Hill lots where we have 70% of our site is open and clear, where we can drive heavy machinery in, staging grounds. We're working with literally zero clearance on our side lot lines. Our foundations are on the property lines. 0 lane side staging area. 90% of these you're dealing with, existing dwellings that have occupants in them. So the sequencing of tying in our, services, electrical, plumbing, with keeping everybody sort of happy and operational, are certainly some front end challenges in the projects. I found that, once you get these buildings out of the ground per se, then you're essentially home free. Tying in the services was a particular challenge. We had a 80-foot long service trench that we had to excavate from our property right out to the street, dealing with, footing depth sizes between houses, and, the logistics of it were very challenging.
And how did you guys decide where to tie in all the services and mechanical? Did that shift at all?
Yeah, so, there's so many different ways in the new sort of modern construction type, especially with new build for heating and cooling systems. The architect was very set on not using natural gas, or using as little as possible to power all the mechanical equipment we had. So we spent a lot of time up front trying to design a, almost purely electrically powered heating and cooling system. But unfortunately, because of some budgetary constraints, we weren't able to go through with the 400 amp service upgrade that would have been required to the property. So we were only able to do a 200 amp service upgrade to the actual civic address, which then left us with only 100 amps of power for our build. So after looking at, 3 or 4 different types of HVAC systems, we ended up picking sort of a hybrid radiant heating system and a more traditional forced air system for the cooling side. One of the challenges with a more compact design is you don't have as many opportunities to hide services. So, a lot of the sort of bulkheads and a lot of the pan ceilings that we ended up seeing here is actually a way to hide ductwork. And we worked super hard to lay everything out in a way where it looks like a purposeful design decision, but it's actually, a necessary evil in routing our ductwork. So depending on clients' budgets, there's so many different systems now, but the typical low velocity air handling system is I think going to be the most commonly used system in here. It just creates some unique challenges with a more compact framing package.
Does George feel like a bit of a quasi PM to you?
He does. He wears many different hats. He wore many different hats through this. Quasi PM is certainly one of them. Neighborhood liaison was a big one for him as well. He kept the trades. I tell all the sub trades, though George may technically be the client. You can talk to him like one of us, which is another thing that just kept the job moving.
What Jake talked about with terms of the client, one thing I've learned from having done a few building projects is, as the client, know your limitations and give in on your naive ideas and dreams and goals fast. Because you can talk about lots of, wouldn't it be great? Can we do this? Can you draw that? But when it comes time to build, you're on the battlefield and you've got to get to the goal line very, very efficiently. And you got to give up. You got to stop saying, why can't we do this? Why can't we? Like, I had a really naive idea that this could be some kind of a walk-up with, bifold doors, a grand entrance into the garden. And once I was on site and actually the old building was demolished, I realized, wow, that was an incredibly naive idea. And Jake quickly talked me out of it. Saved us a ton of time. Because I was thinking, I'm going to get that. I'm going to fight for that. Right. They just don't want to do it because it's going to take a bit more time. Right. But no, it was a bad idea. Is that a great idea in your head, bad idea to build?
There's no such thing really as a closed door. It's just a question of how can we give you the things that are important to you without wasting budget and time. And at the end of the day, that's the builder's first job, right? I think we've gotten 95% of the boxes checked on this one. Everyone is still a learning experience, right? There's, you'd be a fool to say that you've peaked and reached your max potential. If you were to add this layer of detail to, a monster new build, you'd be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on finished details. But because these things are nice and tight and compact, you can add, a few well-placed details and it transforms the whole space. I think these things are a fantastic opportunity to build, at a high-end budget and also at an economy budget, right? The economy side of things, I think, could really solve the density, sort of affordable housing situation in Toronto. And then also it transfers well to a high-end end user site as well, right? So I think all in all, it's a super exciting situation in Toronto now that we're potentially going to be including garden suites. We're going to eliminate the need to have a laneway to get your permission. It's just going to change the demographic of rental living situations in Toronto.